machinery.
Yeah, I've never failed to be McDowell.
It is a pleasure this morning to welcome James Dickey to the Library of Congress for a reading of his poetry. This is Richard Eberhardt, consultant in poetry. The day is April 22nd, 1960. Mr. Dickey.
This is James Dickey reading from his poetry at the Library of Congress, the 22nd of April, 1960. Awaiting the swimmer. Light fails in crossing a river. The current shines deeply without it. I hold a white cloth in my hands. The air turns over one leaf. One force is left in my arms to handle the cloth, spread it gently, and show where I stand above water. I see her loosed hair straining. She is trying to come to me here. I cannot swim, and she knows it. Her gaze makes the cloth burn my hands. I can stand only where I am standing. Shall she fail and go down to the sea? Shall she call as she changes to water? She swims to overcome fear. One force is left in her arms. How can she come but in glory? The current burns. I love that moving to me love, now passing the midst of the road where she's buried. Her best motions come from the river. Her fear flows away from the sea. The way to walk upon water is to work lying down as in love. The way to wait in a field is to hold a white cloth in your hands and sing with the sound of the river. Called here by the luminous towel, my rib humming breath and my love, she steps from the twilit water. At the level of my throat she closes her eyes and ends my singing. I wrap her thin form in the towel, and we walk through the motionless grasses to the house, where the chairs we sit in have only one force in their arms. The bed, like the river, is shining. Yet what shall I do when I reach her through the moon opened wide on the floorboards? What can I perform to come near her? How hope to bear up when she gives me the fear-killing moves of her body? Trees and cattle. Many trees can stand unshaded in this place where the sun is alone, but some may break out. They may be taken to heaven, so gold is my only sight. Through me 2 red cows walk. From a crowning glory of slowness they are not taken. Let one hoof knock on a stone, and off it a spark jump quickly, and fire may sweep these fields and all outburn the blind sun. Like a new light I enter my life, and hover not yet consumed, with the trees in holy alliance, about to be offered up, about to get wings where we stand. The whole field stammers with gold. No leaf but is actively still. There is no quiet or noise. Continually out of a fire a bull walks forth, and makes of my mind a red beast, at each step feeling how the sun more deeply is burning, because trees and cattle exist. I go away in the end. In the shade my bull's horns die from my head. In some earthly way I have been given my heart. Behind my back a tree leaps up on wings that could save me from death. Its branches dance over my head. Its flight strikes a root in me. A cow beneath it lies down. This is called The Vegetable King, and it is a poem about a man who sleeps out in his own yard in the springtime of the year, and through some process of his own comes to identify himself with the vegetable god or vegetable king of the old Asia Minor sacrificial rites, in which a victim was sacrificed and was supposedly resurrected with the crops in the spring of the year. And this is a kind of another way to use the famous device that Eliot uses as the resurrection symbol in the wasteland. Just after the sun has closed, I swing the fresh paint of the door and have opened the new green dark. From my house and my silent folk I step and lay me in ritual down. One night each April I unroll the musty sleeping bag and beat from it a cloud of sleeping moths. I leave the house, which leaves its window light on the ground in gold frames picturing grass, and lie in the unconsecrated grove of small suburban pines, and never move as the ground not ever shall move, remembering to feel the still earth turn my house around the sun, where all is dark, unhoped for, and undone. I cannot sleep until the lights are out, and the lights of the house of grass also snap off from underground. Beneath the gods and animals of heaven, mismade inspiringly like them, I fall to a colored sleep enveloping the house, or coming out of the dark side of the sun, and begin to believe a dream I never once have had, of being part of the acclaimed rebirth of the ruined, calm world in spring, when the drowned god and the dreamed-of sun unite to bring the red, the blue, the common yellow flower out of earth of the tended and untended garden, when the chosen man, hacked apart in the growing cold of the year, by the whole of mindless nature is assembled from the trembling, untroubled river. I believe I become that man, become as bloodless as a god within the water, who yet returns to walk a woman's rooms where flowers on the mantelpiece are those bought by his death. A warm wind springs from the curtains. Blue china and milk on the table are mild, convincing, and strange. At that time it is light, and as my eyelid lifts an instant before the other, the last star is withdrawn alive from its fiery fable. I would not think to move, nor cry, I live, just yet, nor shake the twinkling horsehair of my head, nor rise, nor shine, nor live with any but the slant green mummied light and wintry bell-swung undergloom of waters, wherethrough my severed head has prophesied for the silent daffodil and righteous leaf, and now has told the truth. This is the time foresaid, when I must enter the waking house, and return to a human love cherished on faith through winter, that time when I in the night of water lay, with sparkling animals of light and distance made, with gods which move through heaven only as the spheres are moved by music. Mother, son, and wife who live with me, I am in death and waking. Give me the looks that recall me. None knows why you have waited in the cold, thin house for winter to turn the inmost sunlight green and blue and red with life. But it must be so, since you have set these flowers upon the table, and milk for him who, recurring in this body, bears you home magnificent pardon and dread impending crime. The underground stream. I lay at the edge of a well, and thought how to bury my smile under the thorn, where the leaf at the sill of oblivion safe put forth its instant green in a flow from underground. I sought how the spirit could fall down this moss-feathered well, the motion by which my face could descend through structureless grass, dreaming of love, and pass through solid earth to rest on the unseen water's breast, timelessly smiling and free of the world, of light, and of me. I made and imagined that smile to float there, mile on mile of streaming, unknowable wonder, overhearing a silence like thunder possess every stone of the well forever, where my face fell from the upper springtime world, and my odd living mouth unfurled an eternal grin, while I in the bright and stunned grass lay and turned to air without age. My first love fingered a page and sang with Campion. The heart in my breast turned green. I entered the words afresh, at one with her singing flesh. But all the time I felt the secret triumph melt down through the rooted thorn, and the smile I filtered through stone motionless lie, not murmuring but listening only, and hearing my image of joy flow down. I turned from the girl I had found in a song once sung by my mother, and loved my one true brother, the tall cadaver, who either grew or did not grow, but smiled with a smile of singing, or a smile of incredible longing to rise through a circle of stone, gazing up at a sky alone visible at the top of a well, and seeking for years to deliver his mouth from the endless river of my oil-on-the-water smile, and claim his own grave face, that mine might live in its place. I lay at the edge of a well, and then I smiled and fell. This one is called Drowning with Others, and it's about men in mid-ocean with no recourse from an inevitable death by drowning, except a few minutes longer with each other in a hopeless situation. There are moments a man turns from us, whom we have all known until now. Upgathered, we watch him grow, unshipping his shoulder bones like human everyday wings that he has not ever used, releasing his hair from his brain, a kingfisher's crest, confused by the God-tilted light of heaven. His deep window-watching smile comes closely upon us in waves, and spreads, and now we are at last within it, dancing. Slowly we turn and shine upon what is holding us, as under our feet he soars, struck dumb as the angel of Eden, in wide eye-opening rings. Yet the hand on my shoulder fears to feel my own wing blades spring, to feel me sink slowly away and my hair turned loose like a thought of a fisher bird dying in flight. If I opened my arms, I could hear every shell in the sea find the word it has tried to put into my mouth. Broad flight would become of my dancing, and I would obsess the whole sea. But I keep rising and singing with my last breath. Upon my back, with his hand on my unborn wing, a man rests easy as sunlight, who has kept himself free of the forms of the deaf, down-soaring dead, and me laid out and alive for nothing at all in his arms. This is called The Landfall. Blue water, upon it 2 possible movements. For hours I put them together. My shoulders shut and were opened, and the land fell out of the world. In my parallel hands I turned the huge sea over and over, and looked in her eyes as I rode, seeing there no promise of landfall, but only my head set its jaw, flame up in her mind and burn out. And I turned in my ribs and beheld, far back in the whaling glitter, a place in the sun, a bar of sand, a province of shadowless trembling. We rode round it, bringing our presents. In sand we drew a circle for a bed. Beside it we posted an oar, and felt as it rooted in burning, all fish struck around us down to the floor of the sea by the sun. Our garments fell from us like grave cloths. Her hair shone on me and hurt me. I entered her man-killing image. The oar-stock burst into leaves. My shoulder blades hovered above me like wings as we moved with each other. In her eyes I flew like a gull on the strength of 2 possible movements. and yet at the height of that motion we could not shade one another in any position we measured. Pain stitched my white back to the sun. Her face changed color beneath me. I dragged the boat onto the bar, overturned it, and we crept under. Each fought to give breath to the other, as the boards sprained apart in the heat, and one fiery crack pursued us down the hull where it died on her breast. A wind reached the air. Another thing shone. In the cool-bodied water we knelt and righted the boat and embarked. We stepped through the moonlight for hours. On wood I waved thinly through water. At midnight I turned from the ocean up a still, mossed canal between roadways, with trees broad as lawns leaning over our crusted, salt-glittering heads, and lights going out within houses as the wind turned around. And we rose up at last in the boat by two banks of land balanced strongly, and touched one another, come back from the unrelieved kingdom to kiss with black lips in the city, to dream of mild sleep in a bed swept clean with a broom of its sand grains, where the frame of a window upon us would hold first a tree and then features emerging from dark into presence above the bed's bearable glow, where from that child, never touched by the rays of the sun, might rise because of love. This one is called In the Treehouse at Night. And now the green household is dark. The half-moon completely is shining on the earth-lighted tops of the trees. To be dead, a house must be still. The floor and the walls wave me slowly. I am deep in them over my head. The needles and pine cones about me are full of small birds at their roundest, their fists without mercy gripping hard down through the tree to the roots to sing back at light when they feel it. We lie here like angels in bodies, my brothers and I, one dead, the other asleep from much living, in mid-air huddled beside me. Dark climbed to us here as we climbed up the nails I have hammered all day through the sprained comic rungs of the ladder of broom handles, crate slats, and lathes, foot by foot up the trunk to the branches, where we came out at last over lakes of leaves, of fields disencumbered of earth, that move with the moves of the spirit. Each nail that sustains us I set here. Each nail in the house is now steadied by my dead brother's huge freckled hand. Through the years he has pointed his hammer up into these limbs and told us that we must ascend and all lie here. Step after step he has brought me, embracing the trunk as his body, shaking its limbs with my heartbeat till the pine cones danced without wind and fell from the branches like apples. In the arm-slender forks of our dwelling I breathe my live brother's light hair. The blanket around us becomes as solid as stone, and it sways. With all my heart I close the blue timeless eye of my mind. Wind springs as my dead brother smiles and touches the tree at the root. A shudder of joy runs up the trunk. The needles tingle, one bird uncontrollably cries. The wind changes round and I stir within another's life. Whose life? Who is dead? Whose presence is living? When may I fall strangely to earth, who am nailed to this branch by a spirit? Can two bodies make up a third? To sing, must I feel the world's light? My green, graceful bones fill the air with sleeping birds. Alone, alone, and with them I move gently. I move at the heart of the world. This one is called Between Two Prisoners, and it's about two boys in my squadron overseas during the war who were taken prisoner by the Japanese and kept in an old schoolhouse the night before they were beheaded. I would not wish to sit in my shape bound together with wire, wedged into a child's sprained desk in the schoolhouse under the palm tree. Only those who did could have done it. One bled from a cut on his temple, and sat with his yellow head bowed, his wound for him painfully thinking. A belief in words grew upon them that the unbound who walk cannot know. The guard at the window leaned close in a movement he took from the palm tree, to hear in a foreign tongue all things which cannot be said. In the splintering clapboard room, they rested the sides of their faces on the tops of the desks as they talked. Because of the presence of children and the deep signs carved in the desk tops, signs on the empty blackboard began like a rain to appear. In the luminous chalks of all colors, green face, yellow breast, white sails whose wing feathers made the wall burn like a waterfall seen in a fever, an angel came boldly to light, from his hands casting green ragged bolts, each having the shape of a palm leaf. Also traced upon darkness in chalk was the guard at the rear window leaning through the red, vital strokes of his tears. Behind him men lying with swords as with women heard themselves sing, and woke then, terribly knowing that they were a death squad singing in its sleep in the middle of a war. A wind sprang out of the tree. The guard awoke by the window and found he had talked to himself all night in two voices of heaven. He stood in the sunlit playground where the quiet boys knelt together in their bloodletting trusses of wire, and saw their moss-severed heads make the ground jump up like a dog. I watched the small guard be hanged a year later to the day in a closed horse stall in Manila. No one knows what language he spoke as his face changed into all colors and gave off his red promised tears, or if he learned blindly to read a child's deep hacked hieroglyphics which can call up an angel from nothing, or what was said for an instant there in the tide scribbled dark between him and a figure drawn hugely in chalk, speaking words that can never be spoken except in a foreign tongue, in the end, at the end of a war. This is called Fog Envelops the Animals, and it's a poem about hunting and a man who goes into the forest in a white camouflage suit during a heavy fog to hunt with a bow and arrow. Fog envelops the animals. Not one can be seen, and they live. At my knees, a cloud wears slowly up out of the buried earth. In a white suit I stand waiting. Soundlessly whiteness is eating my visible self alive. I shall enter this world like the dead, floating through tree trunks on currents and streams of untouchable pureness that shine without thinking of light. My hands burn away at my sides in the pale risen ghosts of deep rivers. In my hood, peaked like a flame, I feel my own long-hidden, long-sought invisibility come forth from my solid body. I stand with all beasts in a cloud. Of them I am deadly aware, and they not of me in this life. Only my front teeth are showing as the dry fog mounts to my lips in a motion long buried in water, and now one by one my teeth, like rows of candles, go out. In the spirit of flame, my hood holds the face of my soul without burning, and I drift forward through the hearts of the curdling oak trees, borne by the river of heaven. My arrows, keener than snowflakes, are with me whenever I touch them. Above my head the trees exchange their arms in the purest fear upon earth. Silence, whiteness, hunting. And this one is called The Magus. It's a Christmas poem about one of the wise men who arrives before the other two. It is time for the others to come. This child is no more than a god. No cars are moving this night. The lights in the houses go out. I put these out with the rest. From his crib the child begins to shine, letting forth one ray through the 12 simple bars of his bed, down into the trees, where 2 long-lost other men shall be drawn slowly up to the brink of the house, slowly in through the breath on the window. But how did I get in this room? Is this my son or another's? Where is the woman to tell me how my face is lit up by his body? It is time for the others to come. An event more miraculous yet is the thing I am shining to tell you. This child is no more than a child. And the last one I read is called Sleeping Out at Easter. All dark is now no more. This forest is drawing a light. All presences change into trees. One eye opens slowly without me. My sight is the same as the sun's, for this is the grave of the king, where the earth turns, waking a choir. All dark is now no more. Birds speak, their voices beyond them. A light has told them their song. My animal eyes become human as the word rises out of the darkness, where my right hand, buried beneath me, hoveringly tingles with grasping the source of all song at the root. Birds sing, their voices beyond them. Put down those seeds in your hand. These trees have not yet been planted. A light should come round the world, yet my army blanket is dark, that shall sparkle with dew in the sun. My magical shepherd's cloak is not yet alive on my flesh. Put down those seeds in your hand. In your palm is the secret of waking. Unclasp your purple-nailed fingers, and the wood and the sunlight together shall spring and make good the world. The sounds in the air shall find bodies, and a feather shall drift from the pine top you shall feel with your long buried hand. In your palm is the secret of waking, for the king's grave turns him to light. A woman shall look through the window and see me here huddled and blazing. My child, mouth open, still sleeping, hears the song in the egg of a bird. The sun shall have told him that song of a father returning from darkness, for the king's grave turns you to light. All dark is now no more. In your palm is the secret of waking. Put down those seeds in your hand. All presences change into trees. A feather shall drift from the pine top. The sun shall have told you this song, for this is the grave of the king, for the king's grave turns you to light.
Very nice. Do you actually sleep out?
Yeah, every day, every night in the spring, just about. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's just like that, but.
No. Well, I don't know. The evidence is there. Yeah.
We're hoping this is just a rest period that you're going to read.
I can read a little more if you like. Yeah, all right, fine.
We got 3 subscribers out here. Have you read some more?
Oh, really? Well, fine. Well, let me look up some more stuff then. As I say, I have all my extant works here. I tend to come back to the same subjects again and again, but I feel that I just graze this part of it on one poem, and there's so much left in the mine shaft that I tend to go back and go over the same thing a different way.
Didn't you have a longer one in poetry about flying during the war?
I've had lots of them about that.
Yeah, that's fairly recent, in a year or so ago, maybe.
I've got another one about the guy being beheaded, too. Another one about that. I've got so much. Let me see. I want to read that. I'll read those two. I'll read that one. Have you got a piece of paper you can lend me to stick in here?
Sure. Let's see.
I'll read that one.
Here.
Can you
Here.
tear off a cut? No, don't tear up your gut.
No,
Matter.
here,
Don't
just
tear
take
up the
this.
manuscript. Okay, I'll read those two and that one.
You can tear that if you want.
No need.
Are you going to give me this book?
Yes, that's the idea.
That's the idea.
I'll see if I can get it signed. Have you got another one?
No, that's all right.
Okay.
You're the one that does the thing.
Yeah,
Alright, so I'll read the one about the uncle. I'll read that one. Okay, well, we can go anytime now.
Okay.
The performance. The last time I saw Donald Armstrong, he was staggering oddly off into the sun going down of the Philippine Islands. I let my shovel fall and put that hand above my eyes and moved some way to one side that his body might pass through the sun, and I saw how well he was not standing there on his hands, on his spindle-shanked forearms balanced, unbalanced, with his big feet looming and waving in the great, untrustworthy air he flew in each night when it darkened. Dust fanned in scraped puffs from the earth beneath his arms, and blood turned his face inside out to demonstrate its suppleness of veins as he perfected his role. Next day he toppled his head off on an island beach to the south, and the enemy's two-handed sword did not fall from anyone's hands at that miraculous sight, as the head rolled over upon its wide-eyed face and fell into the inadequate grave he had dug for himself under pressure. Yet I put my flat hand to my eyebrows months later to see him again in the sun, when I learned how he died, and imagined him there, come judged before his small captors, doing all his lean tricks to amaze them, the back somersault, the kip up, and at last the stand on his hands, perfect, with his feet together, his head down, evenly breathing, as the sun poured up from the sea and the headsman broke down in a blaze of tears, in that light of the thin, long human frame upside down in its own strange joy. And if some other one had not told him, would have cut off the feet instead of the head, and if Armstrong had not presently risen in kingly, round-shouldered attendance, and then knelt down in himself beside his hacked, glittering grave, having done all things in this life that he could. This one is called Uncle.
Reality is encroaching upon the realm of poetry.
Or else reality is encroaching upon the world of hammers, whichever way you want to take it.
Okay.
Uncle. All around they hiddenly hear him, the matched, trim, saddle-shaped leaves scramblingly nod without wind. Now a lake, now a clamoring chorus of turned green, insolent ears, pricked up inside a deep pain that covers everything upon the earth. If he does not move, he can live with himself. though if he does, his joints flash punishing fires. If it were only for this, he still would get to his feet, toss his hound-headed cane away, and dance an old rich man's dance up and down on the ears of the ivy, swaying upon that deep, unearthly, earth-bound cloud, with rusty sparks from his knees and elbows flying about him, till he seemed to cavort in the sky, or human fireworks, or were the great bear dancing in heaven in broad daylight for joy. Yet this way joy is the same as if he were dancing alone. The pain is almost the same, though he does not move any joints, though he keeps his long cane at his side. He is watching the ivy grow, devouring his weak-kneed grass. He is watching it wait to wave its unclaimed, ravenous heads. Though he could walk on that water, or lie in it singing forever, he had rather think of its drawing unkillable force from his ground, to be all his wealth shall apportion to this unbequeathable spot. He feels that his tongue will turn green as an angel's one word, when the walls of his house disappear deep into a crawling cloud, and the wide upper windows sense the forced triumphal approach, creeping upward, brick by brick, like the eyes of a cat, till ivy festoons the rafters, covers each wall like a thicket, and lifts his marriage and deathbed clear of the floor, gently swinging. Slowly, dancingly, he says to himself what the taste of his shadow tells him. The leaves rise up in his eyes, and he may be sitting there saying a word as alive as an angel's, increase, increase, increase. This is called The String, which is a poem about a brother of mine who was dead before I was born. I remember my mother telling me that he used to be able to perform all kinds of tricks with pieces of string. This has always sort of fascinated me, so I waited for years until I thought I understood what it meant, and then wrote this poem, which is called The String. Except when he enters my son, the same age as he at his death, I cannot bring my brother to myself. I do not have his memory in my life, yet he is in my mind and on my hands. I weave the trivial string upon a light, dead before I was born. Mark how the brother must live who comes through the words of my mother. I have been told he lay in his deathbed singing with fever, performing with string on his fingers incredible feats of construction, there before he was born. His Jacob's coffin now floats deeply between my fingers. The strings with my thin bones shake. My eyes go from me and down through my bound, spread hands to the dead, from the kin of the dead, dead before I was born. The gaze of genius comes back. The rose window of Chartres is in it, and Diogenes lines upon sand, and the sun through the Brooklyn Bridge, and caught in a web the regard of a skeletal, blood-sharing child, dead before I was born. I believe in my father and mother, finding no hope in these lines. Out of grief I was myself conceived, and brought to life to replace the incredible child who built on this string in a fever, dead before I was born. A man, I made the same forms for my son that my brother made, who learnt them going to heaven. The coffin of light, the bridge, the cup and saucer of pure air, cradle of cat, the foot of a crow, dead before I was born. I raise up the bridge and the tower. I burn the knit coffin in sunlight for the child who has woven this city, who loved doing this to die, who thought like a spider and sang and completed the maze of my fingers, dead before I was born. This one is called The Game, and it's about a man playing hide and seek with his blind child, who has somehow got away from the real precincts of the game and wandered out into a dangerous place. The father doesn't know whether he's dead or not. In the world or behind the world, my child nearby is concealed, among the high, free-ranging plants at the edge of the bluff, or on the red stone crop below, dead, immortally hidden from view. A cloud comes over, seeking a child within leaves, or a child whose home is the cloud. I feel the sun strongly divide into life and death. Lightly at the change someone laughs. More charged than this wind not to speak, lest he fall from his life on the sound of my voice, I come, drawn into his waiting game. It is filled with blue water. Upon it is the blank, baseless shape of the cloud. At the edge I stand up and seek him, forgetting he might be now everywhere, his body on the rocks having given a child to the wind in my ear. The sea comes forth, the grass hovers clear of the shadow, and I feel the crossed sun give off the green earth that holds me by burning. A great ragged angel of sunlight returns its wild shape to the sea. Lifting out of the waves, the rocks shine and are born again. No sound may now come from another. A laughter springs up at my feet. My blind son stands up beside me, the wind at the quick of his hair silent and hiddenly blowing, his eyes turning round toward my voice. I stoop and see the world living on darkness, and no more danger there than the blind upon earth have beheld, while others reached the limits of their breath and broke them, weeping only for a stone in the sea, or the sun swapping light for a shade in mid-air. So shall he live, whose world can show no thing to hurt him, but in that place shall be what another must seek in his terror, and kneel to in wide-eyed thanksgiving, that both may rise up and be found. And the last one I read will be another poem from the war, which is called The Enclosure. In the islands, the women from the States, the nurses usually, were kept in under very close surveillance and guard. And we used to ride down to the aircraft to fly past one such place. And I was always sort of horrified by this. I didn't know exactly why, but it always seemed odd to me, and I always felt that they were being guarded from me as much as from anything else, any other danger, which is probably the case. This is called The Enclosure. Down the track of a Philippine island, we rode to the aircraft in trucks, going past an enclosure of women, those nurses from sick tents, with a fume of sand dust at our backs. We leapt to the tailgate and drew back then from the guards of the trembling compound, where the nailed wire sang like a Jew's harp and the women like prisoners paced. In the dog-panting night fighter climbing, held up between the engines like a child, I rested my head on my hands. The drained mask fell from my face. I thought I could see through the dark and the heart-pulsing wire. Their dungarees float to the floor, and their light-worthy hair shake down in curls and remarkable shapes that the heads of men cannot grow. And women stand deep in a ring of light, and whisper in panic unto us to deliver them out of the circle of impotence, formed as moonlight spins round a propeller, delicate, eternal, though roaring. A man was suspended above them, outcrying the engines with lust. He was carried away without damage, and the women inviolate woke in a cloud of gauze, overhearing the engine's matched thunder. Then the voice of the man inmixed seemed to them reassuring, unheard of, passing out softly into the hush of napa leaves, reeds, and the sea, and the long wind up from the beaches, all making the nets to be trembling purely around them, and fading the desperate sound to the whine of mosquitoes, turned back by the powdery cloth that they slept in, not touching it, sleeping or waking, with a thing, not even their hair. The man sat away in the moonlight in a braced iron kingly chair, as the engines labored, and carried him off like a child to the west and the thunderstruck mainland. It may have been the notion of a circle of light, or the sigh of the never-thumbed wire, or a cry with the shape of propellers, or the untouched and breath-trembling nets, that led me later at peace to shuck off my clothes in a sickness of moonlight and patience, with a tongue that cried low like a Jew's harp, and a white gaze shimmered upon me like an earthless moon, as from women sleeping kept from themselves and beyond me, to sweat as I did to the north, to pray to a skylight of paper, and fall on the enemy's women with intact and incredible love.
That's very interesting.
That's it for me.
That's the one I remember. That's one I remember. That was in poetry.
Yes, I think it was. Yeah. That's about. I'm about